Adventure Sports Podcast, episode 352. We're talking snowboarding and ski bumming with Dan LeRoy.
On a whim, asked if they needed a bartender, and the guy looks at me like, "Yeah, we really do. It's we just lost somebody." And 2 hours later, I was being walked down to HR, given a ski pass to Big Sky, 4 days a week of bartending at night, and then free lift tickets to anywhere in Montana. So I was just like, "Well, great, And they're like, "You got a place to stay, right?" I was like, "Yeah, sure."
You're listening to the Adventure Sports Podcast, brought to you by 180 Tech. We talk with adventurers from around the globe to bring you the inspiration and motivation you need to get started in the outdoors or to keep you moving if you're already there. Now here's your host, Kurt Linville.
This episode is brought to you in part by Bissell Bark Bath, the easier way to bathe your dog indoors. For more information, go to Bissell/AdventureSports and be sure to use the coupon code AdventureSports when you get a bark bath for your dog. Hey guys, today is all things snowboarding, and I've got the right guy for it. Dan LeRoy is on the horn with me here, and man, we are going to geek out on not just sliding down the ski area on a snowboard. We're going to talk about the snowboard culture, expanded backcountry snowboarding, splitboarding, manufacturing, shaping your own board, all kinds of cool stuff like that. Dan grew up in Evergreen, Colorado, and he has spent many years in the snowboard industry, and he is the guy to talk to. He is from Winterstick Snowboards, and we're going to talk about what makes Winterstick really unique as well toward the end of the show. So anyway, I'm excited to talk snowboarding today. This is going to be a blast. Dan, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Kurt. Good to be here.
So who is Dan LeRoy, man? I hear you grew up in Evergreen, but what's your story? How'd you get into snowboarding?
Yeah, I grew up in Evergreen. My parents got me on skis when I was 3, and by the time I was 13, I was beating them down the hill so much, but still wasn't driving myself to the hill, that I was like, well, I need to try something else just to mix it up. Picked up a snowboard, an old Morrow Revert, and started in. I think it was the winter of '93.
And so you started snowboarding. Now, you started skiing first, and you switched to snowboarding. Was that the right thing to do?
Definitely. My last pair of skis at the time were, black and day glow neon K2s, straight as an arrow.
Right.
Good at pointing downhill and going fast. And around the same time, my last pair of ski boots had taken both my big toenails from me. So that, I wasn't really into the equipment anymore, and it just wasn't doing it for me. And I saw, the snowboards, and I'd skateboarded a little bit, and I was like, I'll just give it a try. It looks like fun.
And then I guess you fell in love with it because you're still doing it.
Yeah, I didn't ski for 10 years at least. I just didn't go back. And finally, when I moved after college, I moved back to Colorado. I picked up another pair of skis and boots and got the equipment on discount and started doing it every once in a while. But now I'm a pluralist.
A pluralist. You're the perfect guy to talk about this. So there's I call it a fun rivalry between skiers and snowboarders, but sometimes it gets a little bit heated, which is funny too.
Yeah.
I think the reason for the heat is because the different ways that we carve on the snow. So skiers screw up the snow for snowboarders, and snowboarders screw up the snow for skiers, right? But we can all live together. What are your thoughts on that?
I like doing one over the other depending on snow conditions. If it's deep snow and fluffy, then and I want to go on challenging terrain, then my board is definitely the way I go. I usually tend to stick to the sides of the mogul runs, where the snowboarders usually kind of hang out, and the moguls are bigger, the turns are kind of surfier, right? And then you get skiers going down the middle, and the bumps are definitely shaped different. But of course, over the last 30 or so years, just watching the hill, it takes, the moguls take a different shape. I don't think they're as deep anymore these years. I remember some moguls just being able to swallow you in the trenches beneath them, over in Mary Jane when I was growing up. And
right.
I think they're a little bit smaller now. There's definitely a different shape to them when you get everybody on there. I don't
Yeah,
think it's any better or worse. It's just, different flavor.
they kind of average out. The skiers are always giving the snowboarders a hard time when they're on a cat track and they're trying to go, and the skiers just skate or pull by. But you guys solved that problem with split boards, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, the transition is such that you don't really whip out the split board on a cat track
Right,
uh,
right.
quite so much. But just pulling the back foot out and skating does a pretty good job. And if you get enough speed going into the cat track, you don't have to worry anyway.
Well, and you know what? The nice boots that snowboarders get to wear, walkable boots, you know what I mean?
Way better,
Oh
way
man,
better.
warmer, more comfortable, and I have to admit it, I'm a skier. I've only snowboarded just a little bit, and it was a ton of fun, but I'm a skier. But when you see a snowboarder going down through the fresh pow and it looks like they're surfing out on the ocean, that's cool. That is
It's pretty
cool.
much it's pretty much one of the best feelings you can have. I think you get to steer your own roller coaster through a field of down. How I like to put it.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, snowboarding obviously is just a hit. Everybody across Colorado knows that. I don't know if there are more skiers or more snowboarders in the mountains up here. I wouldn't want to guess. I will say this that I love skiing with snowboarders, and it's fun to see the little differences and the things a snowboard can do that skis can't, and vice versa. But man, if you're on the mountain, you're having a good time. So I embrace it all.
Exactly. If all I had was a lunch tray and a bunny hill, I would like to think that I would still have some fun.
As long as you could steer it somehow.
Yeah. Start dragging hands. Put a couple of bumps in there just to make things interesting.
Absolutely. Very cool. Well, you know what? Let's talk about a little bit of your snowboarding journey because it became a bigger part of your life than just something to do for fun, right?
It did. It did. I got done with college where I got a math degree, math, anthropology, and philosophy. But I'd started in engineering. I was in physics for a while. I kind of took all the classes I wanted to. But then I got done, and I was like, I just jumped through everybody else's hoops. I'm gonna go do what I've always wanted to do, which was live in a ski town. I wanted to just go be a ski bum. So after college, I ended up getting a job at Vail Valley Academy there in Vail Valley and teaching private school to the likes of Tony Siebert and some other kids there in Vail. And I got 200 days on the mountain in 2 years because, of course, we got to teach them high school in half a day so they can go out and ski. Of course, that means the teachers get to go out and ski too.
Right on. That's
So
amazing.
after 2 seasons of that, I was hooked. I was living in Westvale. I could, hit the Westvale trees, just the Vale side country, and pretty much hit untracked glades to my house and step off my snowboard onto my front porch.
Ah,
And it was awesome. I've mostly rode a K2. I was, just broke, completely broke, because even on that the teacher's pay was not easy living in a ski town.
no.
But I got a Fat Bob 162, true twin snowboard that was just lots of surface area. I told myself I was going to learn how to ride powder switch. Tried that for a little while, but I rode that $5 board. I think probably 150, 160 days. Uh,
$5
just
board?
yeah,
That's
there was
awesome.
there was a lot of top lamination missing from the back. It was like I didn't really care. It was just big enough. I have small feet, but I like to lean over on the carves so much that boot out is just super annoying. When your boot hits the snow
Oh
and
yeah.
your edge comes out of the trench and you go flying. So I was like, I don't want any of that. So give me, as fat a board as I could find, and that K2 Fat Bob fit the bill. So I rode the heck out of that for a while there in Vail. And after a couple of seasons there, I was hooked. I was like, I would love to keep doing this. And I'd always, heard about Telluride, but never gone through there. So I ended up on a road trip back from California, just saying, hey, let's. I was with my college girlfriend at the time, and hey, let's go check out Telluride, see what it's about. Pulled into town, and there was an ad in the paper for library job, and that was my first job in Telluride. I scored the job and was like, oh, now I got to get a place to live, and it all just kind of fell in and fell together, and it was teaching snowboarding and working at the library my first season there in Telluride. And it was living the dream.
Wow. And Telluride has changed a lot over the years. What was the year that you were there? Or the
I
years?
got there in the summer of '06.
Summer of '06. So a lot of the changes were already taking place by the time you were there.
Definitely, if I had showed up in the '90s and bought something on Main Street, I wouldn't have to work anymore today. But uh,
Yeah,
you know,
you'd be set, wouldn't you?
yeah, but everything, the gondola was installed, everything was really moving. And after living there for a little while, I was just really impressed on how such a small town in the middle of nowhere could work on and do things on a global level.
Yeah.
There was the Telluride Science Research Center who brought in, nano materials physicists from across the world and had conferences and the big movies are being filmed there and you're stars walking around and Coolio behind you in line for the cafe and just all this, it just felt like while you were in the middle of nowhere, you were in the center of something. And so I was even more excited when I got the job at Wagner Custom. It was just an ad in the paper. They needed somebody to run a CNC machine, a big robot that cuts out parts. And Marty Bonacci had brought his kind of customizing process out there to Telluride, and Pete Wagner was just starting the shop and putting some skis out and starting to fill in personnel positions. And I was like, well, yeah, Cartesian coordinates and logic, no problem. Sure, I can do that. It was kind of nice to be one of the few guys with a math degree in a ski town.
Right. So you got the CNC job.
Yep. Yep. And then a couple of weeks later, they're like, oh, yeah, and by the way, we got this OEM business for Winterstick. You ever heard of them? And I remember my jaw kind of dropped. I'd never ridden a Winterstick before, but I'd always heard about them and kind of seen them on the periphery as that cool brand that didn't wasn't winning contests, wasn't out there in the half pipe, but just stood for kind of soul riding and out there just being on your own and doing it for the love of it, not doing it because you're winning any contests. And so I was just super stoked. I was like, sweet, Winterstick. And then I had my first powder day on the Swallowtail, and I've never gone back.
Really? Well, tell us. I've been looking at since I haven't tried a Swallowtail. Obviously, if I got on a snowboard, you would laugh at me right now. I would be an extreme novice. But
But you've had
how's
powder
it different?
skis, really, right?
Yeah. So
I
how's the
mean,
Swallowtail different from the standard? Like call it a twin tip board.
yeah. So the up until just a couple of years ago, the only modern one that you could have available was the 183, which is taller than me and taller than most snowboarders. I have a feeling. And the first thing that somebody does when you tell them you ride a 183 is their kind of eyes go big, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, that's a huge board." But I tell them I ride it in the trees, and they go even crazier, more cross-eyed.
Right.
Um, but what it is, it's kind of like a 153 with 30 centimeters extra nose. And back in the 70s, you got to give a ton of credit to Milovich because he made something that is just now finally coming full circle into the industry, which is lots of tip rocker, taper, getting your geometry of whatever you're writing, focused and centered on optimized for one particular snow type, and that for the Swallowtail is the deep stuff, the bottomless stuff.
Oh yeah.
And before you got on a resort, that was all that they were doing. They were just hiking up and getting soft Utah pow. So their shapes quickly became optimized for that kind of riding, and now that everybody is starting to appreciate, at least in the States, the powder experience, that boards shaped to more optimized to that environment are definitely becoming more and more prevalent. And what it does is that all that extra nose and surface area up front, it's 345 at the tip, and most plastic you buy for base material is only 330, so it takes special manufacturing, equipment and resources. But when you get all that surface area up front and you take it all out of the back, it lets you get off your back foot and keep that tip above the snow. Because whether you're a skier or a snowboarder, you let the tip of your equipment dive underneath the snow, and unless you're planning on just like living on the base of the snow underneath the powder, when that powder hits you in the shins, you slow down a lot,
If you don't
and you can
endo,
even go,
right?
yeah, if you don't endo, right? Exactly. So getting all that surface area out there just makes the tip float, and you can take all your weight off your back foot and get it back at least centered, if not leaning on your front foot. And the 183 swallowtail I take in the trees all the time because I can get and lean on my front foot at low speeds and big turns and low angles, and I know the nose still isn't going to just dive on me. And so that frees your back foot up to kind of pivot around the center of the weight, which is now your front foot. And you can make a lot more turns, and you can be confident that your nose isn't going underneath a log. Whatever you hit, you're going right over the top of. And it changes your stance. It changes how you see what you can do. It changes the feel. And it's really awkward to ride on groomers sometimes. It kind of changes things up. But once you get it in its optimum conditions, the light bulb goes on. You're like, oh yeah, this is great. This is how it should work.
Wow.
Um, and so it takes a little bit of a transition. But I got my sister on one for the first time just a couple of weeks ago, and it was a powder day at A Basin, and she was like, no, it's my first day up. I just want to ride my regular board, and we went out and had a great powder day. But the whole time I was like, you should have ridden the Swally. Should have ridden the Swally. And she's tiny. She's like 5'2" and 100 nothing. But I had a Swallowtail 163 that we started making this year, and we hit the Loveland Pass on the way back, and her smile at the bottom was just huge. She was like, "You were right. I should have been riding it all day. It changes the game like holy smokes. You can get off your back foot and everything's it's just so really optimizing for your snow is what that shape is all about for sure. And it's a nice, I guess, segue because optimizing your shape for what you're skiing and how you're skiing is what it's all about.
Well, here's a question for you then. So we don't have as many powder days as we used to, and that might not even be true. This year we don't have as many powder days as last year. I can guarantee you that much. But
yeah,
the deal is that do you want to have two boards? Do you want to have the one that, all right, it's kind of hard today, I'll leave the Swally in the car? You know what I mean? Or do you just say, no, I'm going to figure it out?
I mean, I've ridden the Swally on icy bumps. It really does great in pond skims. It doesn't mind the slush or just huge pools of water. But yeah, anybody that says, "Oh no, this is the one board or the one pair of skis you're ever going to need," it's just not true. You're accepting suboptimal gear. When you get a nice pair of carving skis on and all you want to do is carve groomers all day, you're going to have a great time. Much more of a great time than if you're like, well, I really just want to carve groomers all day, but my personal flotation devices are all I have in the car, so I guess I'll ride those.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. I ski kind of an all-mountain ski that it cuts through the crud really well. It carves well. Not excellent in the powder, but it holds its own. But I know I'm giving up a lot on a pow day, and I guess that's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, you can make it work. Like I said, you can make a lunch tray work. You can make these things work. But when you have the optimum equipment, it's like it does make a huge difference. Even just a pair of skis, from 85 at the waist to 104 at the waist. I was skiing yesterday and trying out a couple different pairs of skis, and one was right for the conditions and the other wasn't. And just the amount of how much I felt better at skiing with the correct equipment on my feet is just huge. You can make stuff work, but boy, if you really want to get out there and enjoy it and optimize those days, and I get it, you don't necessarily need to optimize your equipment for sluffy bumps or icy bumps or a lot of different facets. One pair of skis can work in multiple areas, but once you get that optimum equipment underneath your feet, going back is just nah. You got to have a quiver. you know.
Yeah.
And I ski, I board, I also, telemark. So I have all these decisions to make before I even get on the
That's a
hill.
lot of gear, man. I want to do a geek out a little bit more on the snowboards a little bit later in the show because there's still a lot of stuff about Winterstick that's unique that I want to talk about. But I'd like to get into the kind of the lifestyle behind it. You know, you found a
Mhm.
way to live in two different mountain towns, and Evergreen could be a third if you want to count that. You're headed toward Ned. That's a fourth. It takes a
Yeah.
special kind of a lifestyle to make that work. And I think that a
Yeah.
lot of our listeners probably are like, well, how do you live in a resort town if you're not a millionaire, you know?
You give up on everything else. My parents for the longest time after I moved to Telluride, we're like, you got to get out of Telluride. You got to really start your life. You're not doing anything there. And I felt completely differently. I felt, I was making great connections. I was doing what I loved. I worked for really world class custom ski company, and just made awesome toys for people. And I had a great time doing it. But in town, I think I moved the places I was renting at least once a year, if not more. At some point, I slept a summer in a hammock in somebody's backyard. Um, you know, Sharing rooms. In one of the places I lived, somebody rented out the closet. Uh, it wasn't even a walk-in closet. It was just a closet on the stairs, and one with the sliding doors. But it was big enough for him to sleep in the bottom and hang his stuff above him, and that was happy. Um,
That's wild.
so, like you have to do you just have to be okay with sacrificing other parts of your life to a certain extent anymore. Unless you're moving to Telluride with several $1 million, there's going to be some issues. There's lots of jobs in Telluride right now. That's not the problem. What's really making it harder and harder is lodging, finding a place to live, and an affordable place to live, because you can Airbnb your Telluride mansion out for $1,000 a night. Why would you rent it out for somebody for $2,000 a month?
Right.
That other somebody's like going $2,000 a month. I can't afford that. So you're living outside of town and further away. Telluride is particularly rough because it's in a box canyon. There's not much for neighborhoods to expand to.
Yeah, there's
It's
not much
all
beyond town, is there?
Yeah, it's high density luxury, and you got to go at least half an hour out of town to get to the next town. Ridgeway's right there, and we used to joke it's Ridgeway was a town of the rich people of Montrose and the poor people of Telluride.
Well,
Uh,
some people from Montrose told me a while back that the billionaires ran the millionaires out of Telluride,
yeah,
and they went to
and
Ridgeway.
yeah, Ridgeway's beautiful. It's shh.
Don't tell anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
You know,
amazing what it's like to live in a mountain town. Now, Evergreen, you could call that a mountain suburb of the Front Range of the Denver area.
yeah. You still do have to do the I-70 shuffle, unfortunately. But right now there's only a dusting of snow on my parents' place, but at the same rate, I remember one day when I was a kid jumping off the porch into like 8 feet of snow. So
Yeah.
it's just a bit more hit or miss down here, I think.
Yep. Yep. And you're headed to Netherland. Tell people what Netherland's about. That's kind of a unique little mountain community.
It's a funky little town. I haven't enjoyed being there that much. I got a little piece of land out there, and as a for a steel, and right now there's just trees on it. It's just a windy piece of forest. Uh, but they have like frozen dead guy days. It's quirky. It's a mountain town. I think it reminds me of what I kind of imagined Telluride was like in the 80s.
Yeah, you're probably
Where
right.
it's a ski town, and the people there are funky. They don't want to live in the flatlands, and having outdoor around is nice. It is still so much of a pass-through little town. Like it doesn't get a lot of the income from the skiers because they can just head back down to Denver or Boulder and get anything they need. Why? What's the reason to stop in Netherland? You don't need a hotel there. You just go back home. So it's stayed kind of funky and local, and that's kind of nice, and I could afford it. 'Cause
Yeah.
I wasn't going to be able to afford getting anything close to Telluride.
Well, we lived in Wonderview, like I mentioned to you, in Coal Creek Canyon for 20 years, and that is over the mountain, up the way from Netherland. So it's not Ned, but it's close enough that people in Ned are kind of like, yeah, you're almost local, you know?
Yeah.
So we knew the area well, and we just moved to Gunnison, of course, which we love Gunnison. Awesome place. But it's different. You know, I used to tell people, they would ask, well, what's it like living up in the mountains where you are up there? And I'd say, well, it's not a location, it's a lifestyle. You can't move up there unless you're willing to put up with what it means to live up there. You know, that's it's the weather, it's the commutes, it's a totally different environment than living even on the edge of the mountains somewhere and closer to town. Special thanks to our sponsor, Bissell Bark Bath. Bathing your dog is messy, and it trashes your house. Groomers are expensive, and in the wintertime especially, you can't clean a dog outside, it's just too cold. Well, the Bissell Bark Bath has solved all these problems. You have a spray nozzle that sprays a solution under the fur on the skin, and then you have a suction that lifts that dirty, wet solution out of your dog's fur. You can clean your dog anywhere in the house without making a mess. It only uses 48 ounces of water. It's a great, convenient way to give your dog a nice cleaning indoors. For more information or to buy your bark bath, go to bissell.com/adventure sports. That is BISSELL.com/adventure sports. Use Adventure Sports for the coupon code, and they will send you 2 free no-rinse shampoo bottles as well.
We're not fortune tellers, but when you lace up our new Stronghold work boots, it's easy to see that the future looks strong. We're Danner, and after 85 years of making boots for the unforgiving Pacific Northwest, well, that means our boots come with deep roots. And the new Stronghold work boot does just that. This is what happens when iconic quality runs into modern technology. You get tomorrow's classic today. Get into the Stronghold for strength that starts right from where you stand. Find your local store at danner.com.
Man, lots of different ways to experience the mountain sports, right? And that's kind of what we're talking about. I'd like to segue because after Telluride, you decided to take a hiatus and just really get into snowboarding and splitboarding even for a while.
Yeah, you know, and when you're in Telluride, you don't have many reasons to go elsewhere, especially for skiing. If you leave town, it's not for skiing usually. You're like, okay, I just want to go to the beach. And so I didn't get to ski a whole lot of the West, and it felt like I got my skills to a point. I was like, yeah, I can go enjoy anywhere. I've survived 10 years of doing moderate backcountry in the Telluride area. I definitely wasn't the guy getting out after all the time or risking the big stuff. I kept things easy and just say, hey, I'm gonna go have a nice time, survive. And if I get some good turns in the middle, then awesome. After 10 years of Telluride, I was just ready for something new and found myself at a crossroads where I didn't have any anchors. So I packed up my Forerunner and just said, well, I'm going to be in the Rockies for a while. I did some tours at Berthoud and on a whim drove to Tahoe, but got to Tahoe in the beginning of February, and there was no snow. You couldn't see any snow at the base of Heavenly, so I was like, okay, I guess I'm in the wrong spot. Drove back to the Rockies. I have friends in Jackson, so I skied there for did some tours around the thing. Just living in the back of my car, just it's cold, but you get enough blankets in there, and you kind of figure out how to arrange everything. I put a pallet over the back, so all my stuff was underneath, and I could sleep on top. And it was more stealth than a camper van because it doesn't look like anybody's sleeping there. And if you figure out that somebody's sleeping in there, you just kind of feel sorry for them rather than thinking they're poaching anything.
So you don't get as much heat from the local authorities.
Yeah, they're just kind of like, oh, poor guy.
Well, what was that like? I mean, a lot of people think, I don't know. A lot of my friends over the years were like, man, I'd like to just do that. Just go and see and explore, do the stuff I love to do. Even if I have to live out of my truck for a little while, maybe that's what I ought to do. Was it worth it?
It was totally worth it. It was something I'd always wanted to do. I got to drive into the mountains. I got to wake up every day and go, what do I want to do today? I
Mm.
wrote a little bit of, I read a bunch. I just explored all these places like Jackson and Grand Targhee. I ended up in Big Sky and Bozeman. I was looking at a university in Bozeman for graduate studies and just kind of going wherever the wind took me. It was kind of like a uh, playing poker with your life to a certain extent. Because like, well, what's my hand today? I'm gonna play this chip. I'd go on a tour, and they were a lot solo. So I'd spend a couple of days of like gathering intel. Going to the local ski shops. Okay, I'm thinking about this tour. How's this? Is this Beehive Canyon is nice and easy. Okay, cool. Um, and just made some fun connections. You meet somebody at the top of a 4 hour tour and a nice hike, and they're sharing your beef jerky with you, and as next thing you know, they comp you a pass to Big Sky and say, yeah, come hang out and take a shower at my place, whatever, and you just meet people and drive around, and it was just amazing to do. I ended up
Mm.
in Big Sky and after a tour and walked into the nice Italian place because I was going to spoil myself for once because I was hungry and on a whim asked if they needed a bartender, and the guy looks at me like, yeah, we really do. It's we just lost somebody, and 2 hours later I was being walked down to HR given a ski pass to Big Sky 4 days a week of bartending at night and then free lift tickets to anywhere in Montana. So it was just like, well, great. And they're like, you got a place to stay, right? I was like, yeah, sure. So I say that I slept in the parking lot of Big Sky for a couple of months, but occasionally, somebody would throw me a couch for a day or two, or somebody would leave town. It's like, oh yeah, man, go stay in my place for a couple of days. Met some people, and everybody was just super nice. Most nights I was in my car, but again, if I had 3 days off, I drove to Red Lodge and went skiing, or drove to Whitefish and went skiing. And I mean, one way to look at it is I had a condo at the base of Big Sky for 2 months.
Yeah.
It was only 30 square foot. You had to do a little bit of yoga to get into bed, but
You know what's fun
um,
about that is the freedom of it, I think. And a lot of people that just really love an adventure sport, they think, you got to have a season of that where you're just out doing it, doing what you love and
yeah,
soaking it up and
that's
seeing
the
what
adventure.
happens.
That's the adventure. It's an adventure sport, and that was the adventure. And I'd be climbing into bed, and it's 0 degrees out and blustering and snowing. I'm great. I couldn't be happier. I'm chasing the dreams. I'm looking for a new thing to do and a new place to be, and just having fun. Finding new things every day,
Wow.
and just having that opportunity to just take what you love and roll with it for a little while. Yeah, it was pretty great.
Let's talk about
So
splitboarding. I don't think that all of our listeners know what we're talking about when I say splitboarding. So tell us what that is.
it's the best way to get down the hill in the backcountry. I've done skiing, which involves either AT, which is alpine touring, or telemark in the backcountry. Done that and splitboarding, and I tell you, standing at the top of a couloir, looking down and knowing you have to make telly turns or you can just kind of lean side to side and surf it. Definitely, the board is the way to go. And to achieve that, I think it was the '90s where somebody came up with it first, where they uh, cut a board in two and then used some hardware to put it back together. And you could take it apart into two skis and put some skins on it, like a regular skier would, hike up, put it back together at the top, and get a reasonably close facsimile of snowboarding on the way down. With those early models, they were a bit shaky, but they still did the trick. You still got to surf. Uh, so it just gave the snowboarder better access. And I mean, you can go take snowshoes or whatever, and it does the same thing. But the skin tracks for the skiers, they're efficient. They're already laid. Everybody can kind of play the same game. You don't need to lay two different sets of tracks. And the technology's just been getting better and better with split boards. Fully wrapped inside edges. They're completely made for that aspect. You're not just taking an old board and slicing it in half, putting some bolts to the base. But now it's a niche of a niche now, but it's a growing niche, and it's a wonderful way to just get out and explore the backcountry. And from my point of view, it's not about peak bagging or sending the gnarliest couloir or line or anything like that. It's just going out, having a nice walk, and you get some sledding at the end. You get a little bit of fun.
Well, let's talk about that perspective a little bit. You're just saying, well, it's not about all the gnar. It's about getting out there. And you mentioned before the interview something about watching the Olympics and what snowboarding, that side of snowboarding has gone to, and how you kind of
Hmm.
contrast that with where you took snowboarding for your own self. And I guess there's such a huge breadth in the sport now. Contrast that for us. Where are you with that?
So, I mean, growing up, I was definitely an athlete. I was a three-season athlete in high school, wrestling, football, track, and skiing was always kind of it just wasn't a competition. You're just going out to have some fun. And I think having it that as I was growing up and not getting into the competitive aspects of that was was nice for me and definitely shaped how I see the sport going forward. I see a lot of the sport nowadays. I don't want to rag on the park kids and stuff because everybody, as long as you're having fun, go have fun, sure. But I played in the park a little bit and I smashed myself to pieces. I go off jumps, and 9 out of 10 times you're fine, but that 10th time you can break your hip or your neck or something like that, and um, just knowing for the sport, to me, it's more important to show just going out and having a good time, making some turns, going for a walk in the wilderness, and thriving in an environment once thought deadly, and just it's not without risk, but so much of the culture nowadays is it was who can go bigger. The Instagram and Facebook side of things are going, hey, look at all the stupid stuff I can do to get likes, and I just like to contrast that that's not the whole sport.
Well, you mentioned stuff like banging yourself up in the park, right? And that you don't have to strive for the half pipe amazing skill set to go out and have a blast in a board and to go out in the backcountry and have a natural experience.
Mm,
There's a huge variety out there. It all can be fun, but safety matters with all
yeah.
of it.
Hmm.
And in the backcountry, you better have your Avi training, know what to do with avalanche terrain. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I don't want to mean that. I don't want it to seem that I'm saying one is risky and the other isn't. I mean, there's all sorts of risk that goes into the backcountry stuff. I mean, you don't even have to make a wrong turn or get hurt. I mean, if your equipment fails, and you're 7 miles back in the snow, I mean, you have to be prepared for these kind of things. Um, I think that's another aspect of the sport that is nice. Cultivating like personal responsibility and just being aware of your stuff. You know, in snow science it's a science. You just being aware of the snowpack, of temperature gradients, of uh, moisture movement. Um, for me, it's just another way to I guess draw closer to, and this is going to sound cheesy, I guess, but draw closer to reality, kind of in a Zen Buddhist way. Zen in the art of archery. It's kind of Zen in the art of snowboarding. You don't do it to snowboard. You do it to kind of cultivate that whole awareness, and knowing what the snowpack underneath you looks like is just as important as looking up and knowing what the weather says you should do that day.
Mm.
And it just helps cultivate that higher awareness of stuff that's going on and being part of the environment around you, and that's a big draw for me. But of
Yeah, I
course,
get it.
safety is huge. I've lost you know Tony Seibert. I taught him at Vail Valley Academy, and he died several years ago in East Vail.
Mm.
I've had another friend, Nate Souls, in Telluride Pass, and Abel Palmer earlier this year was another Tellurider. Uh, so I mean, it's I've had friends and colleagues and stuff, have some go down, and it's definitely it's painful, and nobody wants to lose people. And I know a lot of skiers that are like, well, it's worth it, and if I go down an avalanche, I was doing what I loved, and you know it hurts, but at the same time, yeah, you're doing what you love, but you left behind a wife and some kids, and I
Right.
mean that's not responsible. Like,
Yeah.
why are you out there doing this? What is the motivation that's getting you out there and risking your life like this, and looking at what's really motivating us? Is it the couple extra Instagram likes, that you're gonna get? Is it kind of, oh well, everybody else is doing this radical stuff. I got to go out and you know and lay some gnarly tracks down the couloir so I look like I keep up.
Yeah, I
Um,
hear you, man. Adventure
and
sports, you can take them to the edge. You can take them to the envelope. You can also do them in a way that, like you said, you're just more about connecting with your environment and enjoying the sport and kind of the zen of the moment, so to speak. And
mhm,
that's what's beautiful about adventure sports is you can do anything on that spectrum. And you got to figure out what's right for you, but I am on the side of stay safe. It's not worth
mhm,
dying for, you know? Stay
yeah,
safe, go have fun. Decide to leave it for another day if the risk is too high, or if you're not in the groove that day or whatever, safety first so that another day you can go and do it again. And
exactly. And
that's what
and
it's
my
about.
my parents ask me, and even still, they're like, "You don't do that crazy stuff." And I was like, "No, most of the time, no. I can't say that I don't ever put myself at risk there, but most of the time I go skiing, the greatest risk during the day is driving there.
Absolutely.
Um, so no, you can't just take risk out of the thing. I think if you did that, it would lose some of its draw as well. But um, part of the great feeling of accomplishment that you get is yeah, I think going out in a deadly dangerous environment and turning it into your playground. I mean, that's a huge ego boost. And if you do it well, I mean, you get done at the end of the day, you feel like you accomplished something. All you did was smash a couple of snowflakes, but you get this huge feeling of accomplishment, and just joy when you get done with the tour. You're like, yeah, I went out there and laid part of it on the line, or I just went into this environment, into this place, and I came back and I learned something either about myself or the mountains or the weather, and yeah, and that's what I'm hooked on.
Yeah, I get it, man. What about the feeling of saying, hey, I was self sufficient, self reliant? I was the one that put myself out there, and I was the one that had to get myself back. And I've learned this skill set. I've learned how to do that. And, you have that kind of confidence that you learn that, wow, I can do things in life.
Hmm.
I don't have to depend on someone to care for me and to hold my hand and, all that kind of stuff. I've actually learned how to be self sufficient.
Hmm.
I don't know. I like that. I think that self confidence can really help. Not
Yeah,
overconfidence, but you know what I'm saying.
I think it helped me get in my car and just say, hey, I'm going to live in my car for a while. Being a skier and a snowboarder, and having that confidence in, you know, dangerous or unknown areas and exploring like that. Yeah, you don't have to do it for skiing. If you can do it for anything you love, if you really want to do something, you know what? Move into your car, drive to where it's happening, and do it. Like, take your dreams and grab them. Like, if all it's going to take is a couple of nights of discomfort living in the back of your car, then do it. If you got to suffer a little bit to make progress, then it's not really suffering because you're really progressing, and it's all just kudos. It's all just green.
Yeah. And you know what? That's not the norm. That's not the path that most people think they have to take. And I think that's what causes people to take pause and say, I don't know. But the reality is you don't have to do the norm. You just have to build a life, right?
Hmm. Yeah, whatever you're dreaming, whatever you're looking at, go for it. And that's kind of what I've taken away from the whole sport. It's not you against other people. It's you against yourself and the world, and to see what you can create out of nothing in a world of wilderness. So that's my angle. It's not a competition, unless it's just a competition with yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Whether mountain biking, hiking, skiing, or doing other adventure sports, getting split up from your friends and family is no fun. Gotana has solved this problem. That's Gotana, like Antana, but Gotana. Gotana Mesh is a tiny but mighty device that pairs with any smartphone to enable the first 100% off-grid, mobile, long-range, customer-ready mesh network. Your mesh network then allows you to see exactly where other Gotana devices are on your cell phone, as well as to text back and forth so that you can reconnect with your friends and get your day rolling again. These devices are also amazing for travel or finding your loved ones after an emergency. Use Adventure35 promo code to save $35 on this unique device. Never stress out and waste a day trying to find your friends and family again. The promo code is Adventure35. The website is gotana.com. It's official. Winter has arrived, and Bentgate Mountaineering is prepared to help you get ready for your epic winter. Come check out the latest in alpine touring, telemark, NTN, and splitboarding gear. They have brands like Black Crows, DPS, Dynafit, G3, Icelantic, K2, Technica Blizzard, Arc'teryx, Mammoth, Solomon, Volley, Neversummer, Jones, and BCA. And you do need to be safe out there. Bentgate has the latest in avalanche safety gear. They have beacons, airbags, shovels, and probes, and they're ready to help you educate yourself on snow safety. They also rent out gear, so you can get your skis and your boots there, as well as your avalanche safety equipment. What's more, they also have free demo ski days at local resorts, so you can try out the latest gear. Now, how much fun does that sound? So swing by Bentgate in Golden, Colorado, or go to bentgate.com to find your new gear, as well as to get updates on all of their events. Hey, let me tell you a story, a segue here into the next thing I want to talk about, but I got to tell you what happened over the last couple of weeks. So I used to be a ski tech. And so I tuned my own skis and stuff, but I had sharpened my edges on my skis until my skis were base high. What that means is too much PTEX and not enough metal, you can't get on edge well, right? So really hard to carve. So I took him to a place and said, just grind him. Don't do anything else. Just grind him, and I'll do the rest. But I forgot to pick him up in time. So I had to pick him up on the way to the ski area a couple weeks ago. So you know what happened. I got up there. My tips and tails had not been detuned. There's striations going down the PTEX. Everything wanted to go in a straight line, just like train tracks.
That was corduroy.
All I could
Corduroy
do
is good on the mountain, not your ski.
not on the ski. And so all I could do is jump turns all day long. Couldn't carve a thing. And actually, on the first run, we took a nice black. And about halfway down, I stopped because I found a rock. And I pulled off my skis under the lift, and I'm grinding the tails of my skis on this boulder that's sticking out of the snow. And people are looking at me saying, what is he doing? But the reason I tell that story is I brought him back, and then I went ahead and finished the tune the way that I should have in the first place and skied the next time, and they were awesome. Rock solid, loved it. But I love the experience of getting on something that you helped to form and seeing how it does. So that was the segue. You got to shape your own boards and experiment with them and see how they ride. So talk to us about that. That's got to have been an amazing experience.
It's pretty amazing, just yesterday I was riding two pairs of skis. One I had made for myself at the Wagner factory, and another pair that I had just made out of the new factory in Maine. But they were made for like East Coast. And they weren't necessarily made for me. Oh, they're right size, but just not my style of ski. They're both the same length, 175. Actually, the same side cut radius, 17. But different constructions. Tip rocker on one. One's waist was 85, the other was 104. And just the difference yesterday, because I took them to the base and hero snow, awesome. Send it wherever you want, and took them to the top. And gave them each 2 runs top to bottom just to compare. So what's the difference? I'm confident in both constructions. I'm confident in both tunes. I had my hand in both pairs of skis, but one just had a couple of bells and whistles and a couple of different geometry tweaks that just made it right for my style. How I like to ski, which is down the hill, not lots of turns. But carving on edge as much as possible, not sloughing, so I like the tighter side cut radiuses. And when you get a piece of equipment that is optimized for how you ski and what you ski and your body type, everything just comes together and it just clicks.
Mm.
So I'm not saying you can't get that on an off the shelf ski, but you got to be 5'9", 160 pounds to 180 pounds, and want, a specific type of kind of ski. The bigger the ski company gets, the more they have to kind of hit the middle of that bell curve,
Oh yeah.
and so everything kind of gets standardized. When you get just a little bit like this and a little bit like that, it's like going to Cold Stone or one of those ice cream places. You can make all your own ice cream. You get to put in the flavors you want, and then you get this ice cream that's just amazing, and it's like it's everything I ever wanted in an ice cream cone. And being able to put that together is amazing. And then on top of that, you get to do that because, oh well, I made a ski this year. I can make it. I already have that kind of ski. Now I want another type of board, or I have my all mountain board. Now I need my pow stick, or now I need my freestyle stick. And just building your quiver, and so each bit of equipment I have is kind of optimized for me for that particular day. Like I have powder board days that if it's 10 inches or more, it's like, this one or two boards. If it's a hard pack and nothing new, and you don't want to go into, you just want to do groomers, it's usually tele skis, and I have them all kind of set up. But when it's custom tailored to you, that's huge. It just feels great.
I was wondering just this weekend when I was skiing, I was wondering how many people gave up the sport because they were on the wrong equipment.
Oh yeah, and it,
You
and it
know?
doesn't mean you're a beginner either. I mean, once the transition from beginner to intermediate, you're expecting to ski like all these other people because you put the time in, but it's just not going well for you, and you're having a hard time, and you're not being able to do what you think you should do or what you want to do. And I think a lot of that is, yeah, getting on the right equipment. And sometimes the rental guys, sometimes they know, and they can help you out. And sometimes they're just going to throw you on whatever skis they got in back. Here's some boots because they got to get you through the door, got to get you out. They get the next person. Yeah, finding that the right equipment for you and how you ski, it's fun too. You get to technical geek out about, oh, do I like a 17-meter side cut, or do I like a 25-meter side cut? What is the difference? Understanding, how a ski turns and how geometry interacts with the snow. That was the amazing thing that I don't think skiers give the credit to snowboarders for quite enough is, the whole shape revolution, with the side cut and taper. And all of a sudden there was more flavors of ski than just the 200 centimeter GS. Like, yeah, you're gonna ski
Right.
like you're gonna ski like Franz Klammer, or you're not gonna ski. It's
Yep. You just listed the
um,
skis I skied before the ones I have now, and it's like being on two by fours,
yeah, I mean, if they're good, those Franz Klammer GS skis are great for doing that, but not much else. And so there's just such a spectrum that it's really been nice to see that even ski design as a whole is getting away from, no, these are the skis you have to ride and these are the only things that go to, no, you're a different person, you're a different skier. Your ski can be expected to be optimized for a bunch of different things, and let's find that optimum ski that's going to make you the happiest.
Yeah, that's cool. So it's an art form. It really is.
It is, yeah. This is like tailoring a suit, or something like that, where you're really molding. Um, you're taking in information about the process, about how they ski, where they ski, all that kind of stuff, and being able to then see the pictures of the smiles on them. Yeah, of course they look like what they want as well, but you get big smiles going, oh, my skis are so amazing, and they just kind of, when they're the right shape for what you want to use them for, it just kind of melts away. You
Yeah.
don't think about it anymore, and you just get down to the business of riding, and it just becomes one with your feet. It's a beautiful thing.
I've heard a little debate about when the equipment gets so much better, is it cheating? People feel guilty because they put on a new set of skis that make life so much easier. They're like, oh, but does that mean I was never as good? Or does that mean I'm actually better? Or am I cheating somehow because I have good equipment? I'm like, whatever. Take
The
advantage of it
swallowtails,
and have fun.
yeah, the swallowtail is probably the poster boy for that argument, just because it is the most geometrically optimized shape you can get for snowboarding and POW, and yeah, I mean, yes, you can go, down that hill with your, rocker twin tip 152. Uh, it's going to be a different experience than, if you're on the 183 Swallowtail. It doesn't mean one's better than the other from a, purely stand back, look at it, yeah, just getting down the hill perspective. But one's going to feel easier. One's going, yeah, is it cheating? Yeah. I don't know. It's not, there's no rules though. You're just going out there and you're having fun. And if a different shape means you can have more fun, uh, then that's not cheating. That's winning.
I agree.
That's just being prepared.
I agree. That all of the adventure sports, the equipment has developed over the years to where the sports become easier, and you can do stuff on the gear now that was really hard before. And some people might say, "Well, you never learned how to do it on the hard stuff." Well, who cares? Are you having fun? Are you being
Yeah.
safe? You living? That's what it's about. Well, let's talk about, speaking of art form, let's talk about Wintersticks. I look at them, and they're unlike anything else I've seen. They've got
Thank you.
first of all, I'll let you two talk about them. I just want to describe what they look like. You can tell us what it's all about in a second. But the top cap, which may not even actually be a cap, is like beautiful furniture, with polyurethane over the top. And you're looking into this deep, rich wood pattern. And that's not what you expect to see on a snowboard, but it looks so cool.
Yeah. You know, I think it was the Seth Morrisons from either, I think it was like mid 2000s or something like that. It was a big ski, awesome powder ski, but the top sheet was yellow and it had some pencil drawings of a guy puking a river of blood that contained helicopters and razor blades.
Oh, no.
And it was just like, whoa, like where is this going here? Like, there's artwork and there's just like whatever that is. I mean, that, it's memorable. Obviously it did its job in that aspect of the art. Um, and I was at Wagner. I got to do custom top sheets for everything I did. I did some art, and people would call in and they're like, oh, I want pictures of my kids or my dogs on my skis and that kind of stuff. And it's nice to have just something you look down and it feels personal. When you have graphics that are kind of like yours, or at least a graphic that you like. You saw it on the shelf and said, hey, that looks cool. I wanna ride that. The wood has gotten a lot of great attention because it's just classy.
Yeah, it is.
We did it for a variety of reasons. Uh, but I had built some wooden skis there at Wagner and a couple of wooden boards, and I just loved the look. It was a nice, clean look. It wasn't the easiest thing to do. There's still things to be optimized about it. And it had its own quirks. You can just throw a plastic top sheet over just about any kind of construction and it'll look fine. Here, if we get something off by a couple of tenths of a millimeter, you get a little bubble, and then that's a bad thing. So it's actually it's rather tough to do, and getting the finish out of the press just as clean as it could go, and not having to go back over and refinishing it was a big hurdle, and I think a big success because it saved us just a lot of chemicals and processing time. So we just saved a lot of money in how much we had to work it getting that out of the press. But yeah, I mean the wood, it's a beautiful natural look. I'm a big fan of nature anyway, so the elm top sheet looks like a topographic map. The walnut's got, yeah, like you said, classy furniture on it. The fiddleback maple kind of looks like the back of a violin, and yeah, I'm a big fan
Yeah, it
of
looks
wood
really
and
cool.
the natural materials. So
I met you at Outdoor Retailer, and we did a short interview there. And believe it or not, Dan, it airs today while we're recording this one. You're actually on the air today, so people have already heard your voice by the time this one comes out. And there you talked quite a bit about how this is a green ski in the sense that it's better for the environment. Let's recap a little of that since we're in context here.
sure.
What makes it greener?
So you're cutting out a lot of externalities, and if you're not familiar with economics, externalities are things that you don't necessarily have to pay for. The where the trash goes. You pay for a trash, but you can throw anything in your trash bin. It is just taken away. You pay for that service, and it's just become somebody else's problem. Um, when you're using whatever material you're using, you have to think of its entire life. Where did it come from how is it treated, processed to get to where I'm able to use it? What processes do I have to do to get it to the point that it is actually part of what I'm trying to do? And then what's left over? Once I have my product, I probably have a lot of other kind of waste and excess. Where does that go? So by taking out and the most obvious things are the wooden top sheet and the wooden sidewalls. By taking out those two things, I don't have to source sidewall plastic. I don't have to source top sheet plastic. I don't have to source plastic dyes or sublimation inks and all these various solvents and chemicals. I don't need the printers. I can take all these things that I would have to purchase, and all of a sudden I just don't need them anymore. Then once you take it into the manufacturing process, yeah, you're planing. We get it in a stick that's like a centimeter by a centimeter, and we get it in uh, the plastic in much the same way. It's a big stick. It's definitely not profiled at our quantities. It's not already pre-profiled to what we need it for. So we have to plane it down. If it's plastic, you're taking 2/3 of that plastic bar and effectively turning it into particulate. You're running a CNC router over it and planing it down to shape. And for a board, that is equal to a pound of, I know, it was a 2-pound can of coffee container full of plastic shavings.
Mm.
If it's, all of a sudden that's somebody else's problem, and it's not going to decompose. You don't want to throw out the window into the stream. Definitely, that wouldn't be a good thing. And, you have to pay somebody to take care of it. Usually, that's the garbage guy. You throw it in the garbage, and it goes, and it's again somebody else's problem. Looking at externality and taking responsibility for those materials is a big step, and I think it's one that most companies in any industry need to start doing more, is realizing that, yeah, these externalities, somebody has to deal with that at some point in the future. So instead of making a coffee can of plastic shavings that will outlive me, just being able to use a wood sidewall means it's sawdust. You can bed your hamster, you can put it in a compostable toilet, you can, put it as mulch in your lawn. It's just sawdust.
Yeah.
And being able to make that transition is huge. Now, is the snowboard that we make, does it still have fiberglass, epoxy? Yes, yes. Plastic base? Yes. But it's a step, and it's a very visible step. It's right out in front. It's beautiful. They look amazing, and they look just a bit more, natural. It's not space age materials, but it's just made correctly, and it's actually a better product, I believe, as well, because wood wants to bond. It's porous. It's got a bunch of gaps and holes for the epoxy to get into and really become one with the wood. The top sheets are quite thin, and so you'll actually get epoxy soaking all the way through from the bottom, and you don't even have to epoxy the top if you don't want to. And so it'll actually, flow through, and the wood veneer becomes one with the epoxy. The plastic, the top sheets you have to back with like some kind of fuzzy nylon stuff. The sidewalls you got to sand and flame treat, so you get the top of their any surface that you want to bond. You have to make it into kind of a molecular Velcro yourself through certain processes, sanding and flame treating and handling them correctly. And if you do that wrong, then they might not be the most durable thing that you make. Wood is just it's easier to work with. It wants to bond better. It looks nicer, and in the end, I think it performs better too, because you hold up a piece of plastic and it'll droop. You hold up a piece of wood and it keeps its shape. It's got energy to it. It'll give you feedback, and it's just a stronger thing. So I think it just checked all these boxes for us, and it was like, wow, I don't understand why people aren't doing it this way. There's definitely been companies before this that have done this, and their kind of problem is been scaling up and going to China. Scotty Bottoms had wood sidewalls for a long time. Ski Logic had wood sidewalls for a long time. Arbor did wood top sheets for a little bit, and if you look at their history, they kind of got away from that more and more as their volume got greater and greater. So with Winterstick, I think, at least for now, we're not struggling to keep the volume low. We're still kind of working at capturing market share still. So our volumes are nice and low. We can build stuff out of the good materials. And you start with good materials, it reduces your externalities. You start taking responsibility for manufacturing waste, and then you end up with a better product too.
Nice.
So it just kind of hit all these check marks for us, and we're like, yep, that's the way to go. And the last 2 seasons of durability testing have proven that. It's not like we haven't broken anything. We've broken stuff on purpose, and we've broken stuff not on purpose. But you're banging it against a mountain. That's going to happen. When something breaks, you bring it back from the factory and say, okay, how did this break, and how can we make that better? Part of the evolutionary process. But to see how much success we've had with these materials, that's a big thing for me, is just to show the industry that, you can make steps. You don't have to do the excuse like, ski building just isn't a green industry. You know what? We can make it better. Is it snowboards made of maple syrup, hemp, and wood? No, not yet. Nobody's going to be eating these things anytime soon. But just to get out there in the market and say, hey, look, you can make these things with a nod to the environment, and you can make progress.
Yeah, that's cool.
Is just a great thing to be associated with and kind of known for. And
it kind of fits what you were describing with your kind of your zen of snowboarding lifestyle as well. It kind of matches that working with instead of against, kind of a mentality. And I like that.
Yeah.
So how can people find out more about Winterstick snowboards?
Check out our website. There's a bunch of different Facebook groups, some official, some unofficial. There's a whole kind of scene around wintersticking from Utah back in the day. So from old collectors to new enthusiasts and everything in between. We have a pretty good website presence and just a presence in social media in general. Seth Westcott and Rob Kingwell got us in the last 2 Warren Miller films. I had a board in Jeremy Jones' Deeper. The brands out there and getting a little bit of attention, just a little bit of digging, and it's really fun to just read about kind of the whole history and the brand that's been kind of part of the whole history, yet in the background. Definitely didn't take center stage like Burton or Sims or anything like that. But it's its own kind of version of the history of snowboarding.
It's cool. I'll say that much. Listeners, you should go to winterstick.com and look at this stuff, because it's like, oh, I get what you're talking about. It really is cool. Well, Dan, thank you so much for being on with us today. I'm afraid we've burned through our time, but I really enjoyed learning more about snowboarding and skiing culture, backcountry and otherwise, living in mountain towns, and about Winterstick. It's a better way to do it. So cool, man. Thank you.
Yeah, just trying to evolve every day as a rider and a builder, and just try to make the world a better place and have fun doing it.
Right.
Thanks for your time and interest in helping me share the story. Also check out West Mountain Ski Company. We do have a line of skis as well. We have models, but we also do full custom stuff.
So that's West.
Short little plug there.
Yeah,
West Mountain
WestMTNskis.com.
You got it.
WestMTNskis.com, Winterstick.com. Check them out.
Thanks a lot, Kurt.
Yeah, you bet. And for all the listeners out there, I have to say it because I say it every show, but that's what it's about. Get out there. Have some fun.
Coming up on Thursday, Melissa Kahn will be here to talk about the Himalayan Rush Triathlon. Until the next episode, get out and have some fun. Why don't you do yourself and us a favor and become a member of our Facebook group? In there, you can hear about some awesome adventures, learn how to do new ones, and share what you've been up to. And while you're on the web, do us a favor and go over to patreon.com/adventuresportspodcast and consider becoming a patron to help the show. You can also find a link to Patreon at the top of our website at adventuresportspodcast.com. As always, thanks for listening, guys.